Hey class, it's Mr. Wicklehouse. So this is the first video that I've made for you guys this year, and this is starting the unit for rational functions. So today we're going to be talking about simplifying rational expressions. So you may be asking yourself right now, what's a rational expression? Well, a rational expression is any expression with the variable in the denominator. Okay. So it may look something like something as simple as that. Something else that you need to know about these expressions is that they have excluded values. Well, all that means is there are values that I cannot plug into this expression or this function and it won't give me an answer. Okay, so for instance, this one, x can't be 0. So it's kind of like the excluded values are values that are removed outside of the domain. So in other words, the denominator can't be 0, so any value of the variable that would make the denominator 0 is called an excluded value. Okay. So that's what a rational expression is. Now we're going to work on simplifying them. So I have a few examples for you that I'm going to work through. Shouldn't be too bad. We're just essentially, it's like reducing fractions. That's all we're doing right now. Okay. So let's look here at the first example, number 1. So what I want to do here is I want to go through, if this thing will quit focusing, I want to go through and make sure that I write the things so that I can figure out what is the same on top that's on the bottom. So 56 will break down into 7 times 8 times p times p, and that's over top of 7 times 7 times p. Well, that's pretty simple. I can now see what numbers and variables are the same on top and bottom, and I'll just eliminate those, divide them away, so that I'm left with just 8p over 7. I just simplified that rational expression. That was an easy one. Okay, so the idea is I factor the numbers and the variables and then eliminate what matches on top and bottom. Let's look at number 2. This one's a little bit harder, but not really. If I look at my numerator and I'm saying, what can I factor out of this? So I'm all about factoring numerators and denominators. So this top one, I can factor 4 out. That leaves me with p plus 1. And then I have p plus 1 on the bottom. I can't factor anything out of the denominator. Now I can see that I've got a p plus 1 on top and a p plus 1 on the bottom. I'm not factoring, or I'm not dividing this p away. I have to divide the whole thing away. Okay, so this goes away and I'm left with just 4. And that's my answer for that second example. Got 2 more examples for you. They get progressively harder as we go. But remember, all I'm really trying to do is factor. So now I'm looking at this top one and I'm saying what times what will give me 60 but adds to be 16. Or does anything do that? Well, I'm thinking this, x and x. And what times what gives me 60 and adds to give me 16? Well, that's going to be 6 and 10. Both of those are being added together. Now let's look at the bottom one. I want to factor that one. again, I'm saying what times what gives me 90 and adds to give me 19. This is pretty easy. This is x and x, and again, it's 9 and 10. So x plus 9, x plus 10. That's all factored. Now I can see I have an x plus 10 on top, x plus 10 on the bottom. Those go away. My answer then is x plus 6 over x plus 9. Okay. Now let's think for a minute about the excluded values while we're thinking about it. This was the first one we've had a chance to look at that with. Well, what would make this denominator equal to 0? Well, if I take the denominator and set it equal to 0, then I have x equals -9. And that -9 is my excluded value. But it's not my only excluded value, because even though this 10 got canceled out, up here in this, it's still included in my rational expression. Which means that another excluded value for this has to be x equals -10. Because if I plug -10 in up here, I'm going to get 0 again in my denominator, and we can't have that happen. Okay? Last one. R squared minus R minus 42. Well, that's going to factor. It's R minus 6. R plus 6, R minus 7. Okay. This one down here, I'm going to factor. I'm going to be able to take an R squared out because they both have R squared in it. They also both have a 6 in it, which means that this is going to be 7 minus R. This is kind of an oddball because I look at this and it's got the same numbers as this, but they're written differently. Well, when I think about that, I notice, well, what if I factor a negative out of this? Well, if I factor a full negative out, then that's going to make this negative and this positive, which essentially means I have R minus 7 and R minus 7 on top. Those can go away. I've got R plus 6 and negative 6R squared on the bottom. R cannot be 0. It's an excluded value. And remember up here from this one that R cannot be 7 either. It's pretty much all there is to simplifying rational expressions. If you have any questions, come see me. Talk to you later.